Walk outside at night and look up. Somewhere in those stars, if there were other intelligent beings looking back, they might find our planet unremarkable. But if those beings studied Earth's evolutionary history carefully, they would notice something strange, something that has no real parallel anywhere else in the fossil record. For almost the entire existence of the genus Homo, our planet was home to multiple human species at the same time. Several different kinds of humans, walking, thinking, building shelter, caring for the sick, burying their dead all at once. And now there is only us. Not because we were always dominant, not because we were always the strongest. That ending took something specific, and what it took is more unsettling than most people realize. Around 300,000 years ago, Earth had at least 8 different species of humans living simultaneously. Neanderthals across Europe and Western Asia, Denisovans across Central and Eastern Asia, Homo floresiensis, a small-brained, 3-foot-tall human living on an island in Indonesia, Homo luzonensis in the Philippines, Homo naledi in South Africa, Homo erectus, who had already survived for nearly 2 million years, and Homo sapiens, us, still a relatively new species, mostly confined to Africa. 8 different kinds of people, 8 different evolutionary experiments. Today, one remains. The question that should stop you isn't simply what happened to the others. The real question is, why were we the one that survived? For a long time, the answer seemed obvious. We were smarter, better tools, better language, better cooperation. And there is truth in some of this. But when scientists started actually digging through sediment layers, through ancient bones, through DNA extracted from 50,000-year-old remains, they found a story that was far messier and far more intimate. Neanderthals, for example, were not the brutish, dim-witted cave dwellers the word still conjures. That image came from a single misinterpreted skeleton found in 1908, a man who had severe arthritis. Researchers built an entire caricature of a species from one arthritic corpse. The reality was different. Neanderthals cared for their injured. One discovered skeleton showed a man who had lived for years with a withered arm, a blind eye, and multiple fractures, survivable only with sustained help from others. Neanderthals used pigment, possibly for body decoration. They buried their dead. Some buried them with flowers. Their brains were actually slightly larger than ours, on average. They made tools sophisticated enough that early European archaeologists, finding those tools without the bones, assumed they belonged to modern humans. They were not a failed species. They survived for at least 300,000 years in one of the harshest environments on Earth, Ice Age Europe. By any measure, they were successful. And then, roughly 40,000 years after modern humans arrived in Europe, they were gone. The coincidence is hard to ignore. For decades, researchers debated, did we kill them or did they simply fade? Climate was changing. Resources were shifting. Maybe Neanderthals just ran out of space. Maybe disease moved through populations that had never been exposed to each other's microbiomes. Maybe competition for the same prey, the same caves, the same valleys slowly tilted the odds until Neanderthal populations dropped below the threshold needed to recover. But then something unexpected emerged from the labs. In 2010, geneticist Svante Pääbo and his team at the Max Planck Institute published the first draft of the Neanderthal genome. They had extracted ancient DNA from bones nearly 40,000 years old, a technical achievement that won Pääbo the Nobel Prize in 2022. What they found changed everything. Modern humans outside of sub-Saharan Africa carry between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA. Every European, Asian, Indigenous American, Oceanian traces of Neanderthal live in their genome right now. We did not simply replace them. At some point, in some valleys and camps we will never find, we bred with them. They were not other. They were, in some meaningful biological sense, us, or at least close enough that children were born and survived. And then, around the same time, scientists confirmed the Denisovans, not through bones at first, but through a single finger bone found in a Siberian cave. The DNA inside was distinct enough to represent an entirely separate human lineage, one that interbred with modern humans in Asia and whose genetic legacy still exists today in populations across Oceania and Southeast Asia. Some indigenous Tibetans carry a Denisovan gene variant that helps their blood carry oxygen efficiently at high altitudes. A piece of a vanished human species, still working inside living people, still useful, still doing its job. The more researchers looked, the more interbreeding they found. Modern humans didn't just encounter other species and replace them. We absorbed them. Pieces of them are still here. But absorption is not survival. And the question remains, why did those species, with their intelligence, their tools, their communities, ultimately disappear while we continued? One theory focuses not on intelligence, but on communication. Not the capacity for language. Neanderthals almost certainly had some form of complex communication, but the kind of abstract, symbolic language that can convey things that don't physically exist. Ideas, myths, gods, alliances between people who have never met, stories that spread across hundreds of miles. The anthropologist and historian Yuval Noah Harari called this the cognitive revolution, a shift that happened roughly 70,000 years ago in Homo sapiens, possibly connected to changes in brain wiring rather than brain size. Suddenly, our ancestors could cooperate in ways no other species could match. Not just with their family, not just with their tribe, with strangers, with thousands of strangers united by shared beliefs and shared stories. A group of Neanderthals could cooperate beautifully, but they likely couldn't form an alliance with another group of Neanderthals 200 miles away, people they had never met and had no personal reason to trust. Homo sapiens could, because we could share the same myth, the same group identity, the same invisible social structure that made cooperation possible at scale. When modern humans arrived in a territory, they didn't just bring better spears, they brought networks, supply chains of a kind, information systems, redundancy. A single Neanderthal group hit by a hard winter might collapse. A connected network of Homo sapiens groups could redistribute resources, send help, absorb refugees. Scale was everything, and we were the only species that could scale. But even this explanation carries a weight most people don't sit with. If Homo sapiens drove Neanderthals to extinction, even indirectly, through competition and resource pressure rather than outright violence, then we have been doing what we are accused of doing in the modern world for far longer than we knew, pushing other species out, changing ecosystems simply by being present, taking what we need until there is nothing left for anyone else. The last Neanderthals didn't vanish in a catastrophe. They dwindled. Small populations, increasingly fragmented, increasingly unable to find mates, increasingly exposed to diseases for which they had no immunity. The last of them held on in pockets of southern Spain and Gibraltar, where they survived for thousands of years after disappearing everywhere else. And then, quietly, they stopped. The same story unfolded across the world, on different timelines. Homo flossensis, the Hobbit, survived on Flores until at least 50,000 years ago, possibly much later, and then disappeared around the time modern humans arrived in the region. Homo luzonensis, discovered only in 2019, existed in the Philippines until a similar window. Homo naledi, with its strange mix of ancient and modern features, may have overlapped with Homo sapiens in southern Africa. One by one, the lights went out. And here is the thing that should genuinely give you pause. For almost all of human evolutionary history, multiple human species coexisted. Having just one was the exception, having just one was unusual. The world we were born into, a world with exactly one kind of human, is not the world that existed for the previous 2 million years. It is an anomaly, an aftermath. We are not the culmination of human evolution. We are the survivor. And a survivor is not the same thing as a winner. A survivor is the one who remained after the others were gone, for whatever combination of reasons, fair or not, intended or accidental, that history produced. What makes this strange to sit with is the intimacy of it. These weren't abstract creatures. They weren't dinosaurs separated from us by tens of millions of years. Neanderthals buried their dead. Denisovans climbed mountains. Homo flossensis made tools and sailed to islands. They were close enough to us that we had children together. And their descendants, some of them, are inside you now. Next time you wonder what it means to be human, consider that the question itself might be incomplete. Being human was never a single thing. It was a whole range of possibilities, a whole family of minds and bodies and ways of living on this planet. Most of those possibilities are now gone. We are what's left. And if that doesn't make you look at our species slightly differently, not with shame, not with pride, but with something closer to wonder and responsibility, then you haven't fully understood what the fossil record is quietly telling us. We are not alone in the universe, maybe, but on this planet, we have been alone for a very long time, and we made ourselves that way.